panic, embarrassed, exposed. No, that's not how I'm feeling right now, mostly. Those are the feelings I had as a 14-year-old boy. On the very first day of high school, my English teacher, Mr. Meredith, had each of us stand up and introduce ourselves. When class was over, he called me over and said, "Hey, Matt, you're really good at this talking thing. I need you on Saturday to show up at the speech contest." Doing as I was told, I prepared a 10-minute presentation on karate. It was something I was passionate about, and it was pretty easy to do. Now, that cold September Saturday morning, when I showed up, I was shocked. The room was much larger than I had expected. There were many more people there. My friends' parents who were serving as judges, and the girl I had a crush on. At that moment, I felt tremendous anxiety. In the first 10 seconds of my 10-minute presentation, my life changed forever. You see, I started my presentation with a karate kick. I was told to do this because it would engage the audience and get their attention. But because of my anxiety, I forgot to put on my special karate pants. You know the ones with a little extra room down there? You get where this is going. I ripped my pants from belt loop to zipper. In that moment, I learned the impact of anxiety on communication. And from that moment, I have dedicated my life to helping others learn to address this fear. Each of us has stories to share, input to give, and ideas to spread. If we allow anxiety to get in the way of that, we miss out. Society misses out. And we lose valuable, diverse voices. Now, I am not alone in my anxiety in communication. If you have ever given spontaneous feedback, given a presentation, spoken up in a meeting, or even asked somebody on a date, you know what this anxiety feels like. Research shares with us that 85% of people feel anxious in high-stakes speaking situations. And quite frankly, I think the other 15% are lying. I think we can create a situation in which they would feel nervous too. So we must act to manage our anxiety so we can accomplish our communication goals. Now, I use that word manage very carefully. I don't think we can ever truly overcome our anxiety, nor would we want to. Anxiety is actually helpful. It gives us energy, it helps us focus, it tells us what we're doing is important. But we must manage it so it doesn't manage us. And it's not just to help us feel more confident. It helps our audience as well. How do you feel when you see a nervous speaker communicate? Some of you might like to watch people suffer, but most of us don't. Most of us feel very uncomfortable and awkward. In fact, I call this second-hand anxiety. The communicator's anxiety makes us feel nervous as an audience, and therefore we're distracted and we can't pay attention to the message. So we need to manage our anxiety not just to help ourselves as communicators, but to help our audience get our message. Before I introduce you to some techniques that can help us manage our anxiety, I think we need to spend a few moments understanding where this anxiety comes from. I believe it's hardwired in us. It's based on evolution. We are wired to be very concerned about our relative status to others. Now, I'm not saying who drives the fanciest car or who has the most likes to a post they've just put up. I'm talking about the status that existed when our species was first evolving, and we were hanging out in groups of about 150 people. Your relative status there meant everything. It meant access to resources, food, shelter, reproduction. It was absolutely critical that you had status within that group. It was a matter of life or death. So this constant surveillance and understanding of our status is something that we carry forward to this day. Yet, we can manage it. But we have to take a two-pronged approach. We have to first address the symptoms as well as the sources. The symptoms have to do with what goes on in our body physiologically and what goes on in our mind psychologically. And sources are things that actually make our anxiety worse. So let's get started. For some of us, when we start communicating in high-stakes situations, we feel our heart pound. Maybe we get a little shaky. Maybe we perspire or blush. We can manage these symptoms. Take a deep breath before you start. The kind of breath you would do if you're doing yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong. That'll calm you down. If you shake, gesture broadly. Big, broad gestures, they can really help that adrenaline go somewhere. Most nervous people make themselves small and tight, and they hold it in and shake. If you perspire or blush, hold something cold in the palm of your hand. It'll cool you down. Much like putting a cold compress on your forehead or the back of your neck if you have a fever, holding something cold reduces your core body temperature, reduces the perspiration, reduces the blushing. You've all experienced this in reverse. On a cold day, have you ever held hot coffee or tea and felt how it warmed you up? We're just doing the opposite. There are things you can do to manage the physiological symptoms you have around anxiety. But what about the cognitive symptoms? The thing that makes people really nervous cognitively is their own anxiety. It works something like this. You're sitting in a meeting, and your turn is about to come up. And as you're sitting there, you start getting a little shaky. You might have some beads of perspiration on your brow. And you start thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, this is really important. I should have prepared more. I can't believe I'm in this situation. Why am I doing this and not my colleague? This sucks. That's your anxiety making you more nervous. There is a way that you can short-circuit this. Instead of running away from your anxiety, greet it. Say to yourself, this is me feeling nervous. It makes sense that I'm nervous. I'm about to do something of consequence and importance. And by giving yourself permission to feel anxious, you actually give yourself a sense of agency. You can take a breath, walk around the building. This will help you feel composed rather than as if your anxiety is spiraling out of control. We can do things that manage our physiological and psychological symptoms. But we also have to address the things that make our anxiety worse, the sources. The number one fear I hear from people is, I'm afraid I'm going to forget. I'm going to blank out. A great way to manage this is to have a map. You can't get lost if you have a map. A map is nothing more in communication than a plan, a structure, a design. There are many structures that can help you with your communication. My favorite is the what, so what, now what structure. You start by talking about what it is you're communicating. Could be your idea, your plan, your product, a process. You then explain why it's important to your audience. How do they value from what you're saying? And then finally, you explain what is next, what comes afterwards. By having a structure like what, so what, now what, you are less likely to forget. And by the way, it helps the people you're speaking to remember what you're saying as well. Now, another big accelerant to anxiety has to do with the valuation and judgment we feel the audience is doing on us. A great way to manage this is to redirect their attention. Have them focus on something else. So if you're giving a presentation, show a video clip. Take a poll. If you're in interpersonal communication, ask a question. Pass around a handout. These distract people from paying attention to you. It gives you an opportunity to calm down, and the cool thing is, it gets them more involved and engaged. It's a true win-win. The last source I'd like to talk about has to do with how we see our communication. Raise your hand if you have done one of these 4 things before in your life. Has anybody done any singing, dancing, acting, or played a sport? Everybody. In each of those activities, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. You're performing. If you're an actor and you misspeak your line at the wrong time in the wrong place, you've made a mistake, not just for you, but the audience and the other actors. If you're an athlete and you don't do what your sport requires at the right time and the right way, you've done it wrong. In fact, some sports keep track of the errors you make. We carry this mentality of right or wrong into our communication. I am here to tell you, as somebody who has been doing this for a long, long time, there is no right way to communicate. There are better ways and worse ways, certainly, but no one right way. So we need to replace the way we see communication as a performance as something else. And I'd like to suggest we need to reframe it as a conversation. How do you do that? First and foremost, put your attention on your audience. You're in service of their needs. With this audience-centric approach, it makes it more conversational. Second, use conversational language. Words like us, you, and we, that involves people. And finally, ask questions. Questions by their very nature are conversations. They're two-way. In so doing, you make the interaction less stressful for you and more engaging for your audience. So taken together, there are things that we can do to manage our anxiety by addressing both symptoms and sources. Now, this isn't necessarily easy. It takes time. It takes persistence. We're fighting against ingrained anxiety and years of learned behaviors and habits. But with a little self-kindness and patience, we can learn to manage our anxiety. I see it happen all the time. Let me share a story with you. I met Irma, who is a 72-year-old grandmother, a couple years ago. Irma, like me, had a very traumatic experience in high school. She contributed some comment in class, and her English teacher looked at her and said, "That is the absolute worst communication I have ever heard." From that moment on, Irma actively avoided communicating with others. So much so that she chose the profession as a research librarian specifically so she wouldn't have to talk to many people. But one day, her granddaughter, who she loved very much, asked her to give a toast at her wedding. Irma wanted to fulfill this request, and that's where our paths crossed. I'll never forget the look on Irma's face when she told me of her goal. It was a combination of sheer terror and complete determination. Now, I am thrilled to share with you that Irma, after 3 months of hard work and a little encouragement, gave an amazing toast. The joy on her face is something that I will never forget. Like Irma, we all can learn to manage our anxiety, regardless of if you're presenting at a wedding or in a meeting. If you're pitching or protesting, you can learn to feel more confident when you communicate. And we all benefit from the stories you're going to share, the input you're going to give, and the ideas that you're going to spread. I so look forward to your speaking up without freaking out. Thank you.